Greetings, this is another session of A More Excellent Way, a series of messages to reform the church and to make it come to a position which was intended by Jesus for it to operate on earth as it is in heaven. Today's topic is going to deal with church titles and the use of it. Speaking of religious leaders in his time, Jesus states in Matthew 5:5-7 in this manner. He goes on to say, "All their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments." Verse 6, "And love the uppermost rooms at feasts and the chief seats in the synagogues." Verse 7, "And greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi." Reading this account fits like what is observed in church groups today. Some religious groups emphasize elaborate robes to distinguish priests. They also refer to religious ministers as clergy, which is just a Latin word for a special class of people ordained for priestly service, while other members who are sitting on the pews are denoted as laity, indicating ordinary people or the lay person in common terms. In many other Christian groups, titles like pastors, bishops, deacons, and elders are prefixed every time someone addresses such ministers. In fact, there are also Christians who title themselves prophets and apostles and make it known directly or through their associates by insisting that people address them with such titles. There is also the trend of acquiring the title of doctor and then using that prefix for publicity and product sales. One well-known Christian apologist had to give lengthy explanations how he acquired the title of a doctor without even working to get such an educational degree. He attributed it to the culture of certain groups of believers who called everyone in the ministry as a doctor. Obviously, those people in that culture were schooled to obey people in the ministry through honorifics. This famous personality had to go to great lengths later to remove that title of a doctor. Lest I trouble you, dear listener, with sordid details of how the pride of life causes ministers of the gospel to use titles, I present a more excellent way how the situation can be addressed and how the church can prepare itself for the judgment seat of Christ. For this I recall the command of Jesus to all his followers in Matthew 23:8 and 9. "But be not ye called Rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren." Verse 9, he goes on to say, "And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven." Jesus is commanding believers not to use titles to address ministers of the gospel. That means it's okay to not call someone father, pastor, apostle, prophet, deacon, captain, doctor, or any such title that human ingenuity can bring up. Ministers, you can help people to follow Jesus by choosing to remove such titles from your names and just be called by your name that you wish to be called. If believers choose to show honor through those titles, then maybe a Mr. or a Sir or a Ms. can suffice. Peter goes on to remind those called to serve the church in 1 Peter 5, verses 2 and 4 in this manner. He instructs ministers to feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind, neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being ensamples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. That's 1 Peter 5, verses 2 to 4. These are the flock of God. not yours, dear pastor. They are not your property, Mr. Apostle. They are God's heritage. They are not your sheep, dear bishop. We belong to the chief shepherd, Jesus. In God's sight, you, dear church leaders and elders, are in the same position as the least of them. In fact, if God has appointed a Christian to be in any ministry role, it is good to remember what Paul said about the life of an apostle in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 verses 9 and then in 11 and 12. He says, "For I think that God hath set forth us the apostles last, as it were appointed to death, for we are made a spectacle unto the world, and to angels, and to men. Even unto this present hour we both hunger and thirst, and are naked, and are buffeted, and have no certain dwelling place, and labor, working with our own hands. Being reviled we bless, being persecuted we suffer it." Dear brethren, let those marks be the identity of a minister of the gospel who seeks honor. A spectacle bordering hunger and death, with no decent clothing, no fixed place, working with your own hands to earn your living. So, ministers of the gospel, your role is important for the perfecting of saints, but it also brings greater condemnation, as James states. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. So now the question comes to, why did Paul and the other writers of the epistle state their ministry gift, like the apostle at the start of their message? The reason was definitely not to show off their position. It was to lend the stamp of authority to their epistles that they were writing. In the modern day, such a title is just a tool to breed vanity and the downfall of the minister. Even in the modern age, the title doctor is prefixed for those who practice medical science. The title is given not to show how smart or rich the person is, but only so that the public knows that this person is on call 24 hours to serve the sick. Technically, if you must use the word doctor, you are supposed to put at the end of it literature or whatever you have taken as a PhD. But what's the need for such earthly titles? What good does the title of a doctor have in the church body except to be used as a tool for people to be puffed up in their vanity and to subjugate the heritage of the Lord? Comments, feedback, and criticism welcome.